Today we'll be looking at the latest Bitcoin news, like every day. First one, Brazil Senate votes yes to Bitcoin and crypto regulations. Bitcoin is on the verge of gaining adoption in Brazil. The country's Senate has approved a bill geared towards legalizing cryptocurrencies. Also, the proposal aims to create regulatory infrastructure for the digital asset industry. Brazil's Chamber of Deputies will not on the policy. The law could receive full approval before 2022 runs out. And that's around the corner, meaning this can be within the next 6 months. Brazil lawmakers voted in favor of a bill designed to regulate and legalize cryptocurrencies in the country. The Senate passed the proposal on Wednesday, per reports. Details from the suggested crypto-focused policies highlights Brazil approaching the regulating the digital asset industry. Lawmakers proposed that virtual assets should fall under the purview of the executive government. Another country, just one of hundreds to come, is accepting Bitcoin. Assessing if Bitcoin investors are stacking sats amid bearish conundrum. With Bitcoin trading at 38,487 at press time, you'd think that investors would be sick of the King's coin's seemingly refusal to climb above the 40k mark. And they stay there. However, a look at the data suggests this might not be the case. In fact, investors are keeping their heads down and possibly stacking stats for the future. Now, if we look at the current situation, we've seen a lot of Bitcoin being sent to cold storage, meaning they're holding it for the long term. And with the lowest amount of volume of Bitcoin currently on exchanges, small moves can look massive. Bitcoin everywhere, but not on a sat to drink. A new report from Arcane Research noted that the share of Bitcoin supply that hasn't moved in a year or more is at a high of 64%. Now imagine, the more Bitcoin doesn't move, the more volatile the market's going to be. This suggests that more than using Bitcoin to pay for McDonald's meals or Starbucks coffee, investors are perhaps accumulating the asset. I totally agree with that. Accumulation is the key for the future. This theory becomes more solid when you note how Bitcoin supply on exchanges has been steadily falling since about March 2020 to reach levels last seen in late 2018. Ex-Bitmax CEO explains how Bitcoin will have hit $1 million by 2030. The European Union is finished, 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣 says, while yield curve control will put the US in a doom loop. Bitcoin will cost $1 million by 2030, one of the industry's best-known pundits insists, as countries worldwide shun the euro and United States dollar. In his latest blog published on April 27, 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣, former CEO of crypto derivatives giant BitMEX, doubled down on his sky-high price prediction for Bitcoin and gold. Bitcoin gold communities just not fiat. In light of sanction on Russia over invasion of Ukraine, a giant pivot in both geopolitical and economic policy is coming. He says, as the US and European Union battle to reduce dependency on Russian energy and food, the long-term repercussions are all but certain to hurt them and send Bitcoin to the moon. The situation is complex. Inflation already at 40-year highs before the Ukraine conflict is being accelerated by Western sanctions, while Russia reeling from the West freezing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of its offshore assets. China, meanwhile, is eyeing the situation with a view to protecting itself from a copycat move targeting its assets. Since the end of the 1990s, a virtuous circle has seen China sell cheap goods to the West in return for its fiat currency, which is then sent back to importers in return for government debt. This kept interest rates low, and China goods become even cheaper as a result. The disruption, the supply chains, inflation, and now the risk of asset confiscation is now changing the status quo. Rather than switching in production model, however, Hayes believes that China will need to find a way to reduce its exposure to worst-case scenarios. It is impossible for China to sell trillions of US dollars in euro worth of assets without destroying the global financial system. That hurts both the West and the China equally and bigly erode. Therefore, the path of least destruction for those assets is to cease reinvesting maturing bonds back into the Western financial system, to the extent that China or its proxy state-owned banks can lighten up Western equities and real estate without impacting the market, they will do so. Central African Republic officially adopts Bitcoin as legal tender. Another country. The Central African Republic, CAR, has officially adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, according to the President's office, making the world's second nation to do so after El Salvador. President Faustin Archange signed a bill into law that makes Bitcoin legal tender alongside the CFA France and legalize the usage of cryptocurrencies, according to the Chief of Staff in his statement, according to a tweet by AFP on April 27. The CAR is the first country in Africa to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. This move placed the Central African Republic on a map of the world's boldest and most visionary countries, he declared. It's worth mentioning that Finbond reported on April 25th that the Central African Republic passed a bill regulating cryptocurrencies, but had yet to adopt Bitcoin, the second country in the world to adopt Bitcoin, and it's currently sitting in the continent of Africa. World's first ETP with combined Bitcoin gold exposure launched on SIX Swiss exchange. For the first time in its history, the new ETP, unveiled by 21Shares and Byte Asset Management, will bet on Bitcoin and gold. The first exchange-traded product, ETP, that combines Bitcoin and gold exposure has been listed on Europe's third biggest stock exchange, SIX. The new product has been unveiled by Zug-based ETP issuers 21Shares in partnership with investment advisors Byte Asset Management. Looking at these bold statements and breaking news, we're seeing more and more adoption for Bitcoin. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin at this current stage, but more for the long term. Due to the low amount of volume on exchanges, we're going to see a lot of volatility in the market. But with the long run, the price will keep on going up. If we look at it currently, according to information and stats, every time we see a dump, we see institutions buying more and more Bitcoin. Why should the retailer dump and give it to the institutions? Hold on and see what the future brings. Have a great one. Enjoy the news.